Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon, and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you'd like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a Ko-Fi, Patreon, crypto, and thanks button in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and X. Now we are joined by Refracted Curvature, Neil, the Adam Meakin, and a whole bunch of people in Discord, so welcome one and all.
Hello, how are you?
Very well, how are you?
Recovering from yesterday, but everybody's good.
Well,
Let's get it on.
Yesterday spilled into today because we're in the same server again. So over the weekend, having missed going into a different server on Friday of last week because I was very, very ill, we kind of discussed it over the weekend and said, why don't we do several days stint in one specific server rather than dropping in, having a bit of an argy-bargy, then discussing it on our own server. No, let's just go straight back in the following day. Until we wear out our welcome, which hopefully won't happen. But yeah, the idea being that rather than leaving things just tail end of a good discussion, we can reflect on it with the people we've been discussing it. And then if it needs discussing again, it will be. That's the idea. So we're in the same server as we were yesterday. If you tuned in yesterday and you really enjoyed the show, please share the show. As I've done the call to action already in the introduction, but yeah, smash that share button. Now, we will do some housekeeping in the meantime. Any scientific evidence of gravity?
Which one?
Free Palestine says, northbound Equinox Celebration Beach House Seal Beach CA 12 noon till meet other flat earthers. Okay. Thank you for the super chat. Free Palestine.
I don't think it really matters which gravity. They're all in relation to down, which is with respect to a horizontal plane of reference. It's not a sphere.
Yeah, you're going to need the equatorial plane. The equatorial plane just extends infinitely outwards, right? That's how it's described, though. Extended outwards infinitely. But in terms of the actual circle that's derived from the measurement, it's a measurement from Polaris. What's the extended equatorial plane going to be called? Why extend out a minimum elevation angle? Do you know?
It's just a plane of reference. Mathematically, it's how you'd have to describe it as an infinite distance, mathematically.
Sure, but pictorially they show it like maybe it's because the globe's incorporated and they've got the globe as the protractor extending to the point of the equatorial Polaris minimum. But then they extend out that flat surface that's cutting or dissecting through Earth in hell. That bit's extended out as the plane of reference, as you've just described it. But it's labelled extended equatorial plane. Unless I'm very much mistaken.
Yeah, the equatorial plane runs all the way to the celestial sphere. It's their problem where they have a flat plane that extends to the horizon, but they don't want to consider it a flat plane, so they have to go through all these hoops to convert a flat plane to the edge of the protractor that they're measuring from, and use all sorts of transformative mathematics to do that. It's has nothing to do with measurement, though.
Okay. What about any single viable hypothesis from any of the fields of astronomy, cosmology, or astrophysics?
Negative.
How do you guys generally get on in this Discord server with the discussion when it comes to science? Whole group of people, nobody saying anything.
Oh, that's good.
Are you talking about our server, Nathan?
Yeah, I'll ask you, SE. For example,
What we think of science?
well, I'm thinking, do you know the origins of why, for example, that housekeeping question gets asked when we ask for any single viable hypothesis from any of the fields of astronomy, cosmology, or astrophysics? Do you know why that has its origins in the housekeeping questions? You don't have to. I'm not expecting you to know.
I don't know the origins, no. Go ahead, tell us.
Because when we first got here, we were told that the whole body of science proves we're on a sphere.
Right. Rumpus, yeah.
Not just
Gotcha.
Rumpus. You know, if you watch mainstream
Well,
globe
he was the main
proponents,
one, yeah.
well, Rumpus is one, but any mainstream globe proponent will profess to the notion that they've got scientific validity for their belief in a sphere Earth. Doesn't so much happen around us because we asked that housekeeping question.
That makes sense. I remember that. Yep. We have the whole body of science on our side. Yep. That was told to me on many occasions.
Right. But it's a category error.
Right. Now they say science don't prove anything.
But when they asserted it to prove the globe, it was a category error. So to assert that the globe, it's a concrete noun, or flat Earth for that matter, has anything to do with science is a category error because science deals with cause and effect relationships. The globe Earth isn't a cause and effect relationship. It's a category error to say that science proves you're on a globe. So we started asking for scientific evidence, specifically with gravity, because that's the most prevalent when they say that they've got scientific validity for it. They even start to offer up what they call experiments.
What, like Cavendish?
Exactly. Not an experiment. Parlor trick.
At best, they only have an observation.
They don't even have that,
No
to be perfectly
independent
honest.
variable.
Well, they don't
Well,
have that
what's
either.
the
They-
observation?
You say it best.
They have observations.
What's
they
the
have observation.
observation
They
for
have the
gravity then?
Stars moving in the sky.
It's not gravity. So when we're talking about science, step one is to observe the natural phenomena that you're going to study.
So stars moving in the sky wouldn't count for that.
But that would be a phenomena. But then what you're gonna do is put that phenomena through the method to see if you can figure out the cause of it. So dependent variable becomes star movement, perfectly legitimate, naturally occurring phenomena. But then you're trying to find the cause of that dependent variable or observed natural phenomena. So your hypothesis construction will be an if statement, followed by a presumed cause that you have, followed by star movement. So if X, then star movement. Sorry, maybe I'm missing something. That's not gravity, is it?
Right.
Luck with that.
So when you say at best they've got a phenomena to observe or something observed, no, they have not. Not when it comes to gravity. There is no naturally observed phenomena. They have to conjure one. And when they conjure one, they conjure the 109-year out-of-date notion that mass attracts mass in the form of a torsion bar twisting quasi-experiment. Actually, parlor trick. They conjure an effect. But there is no naturally observing effect to observe. Unless you
So
can,
interestingly enough,
unless you
Okay,
can
I
give me
have a
one.
question.
Go ahead.
If you think that there is no natural observed phenomenon in order to derive the hypothesis of gravity, then how do you think gravity was invented in the first place? That concept, like what was the basis which caused Newton to hypothesize that can be the case? Because according to you, it wouldn't make any sense. He would have to just make
You
it
did one.
randomly up.
It doesn't make any sense.
I know this one.
And Newton didn't want anything to do
So you
with it.
think
But you tell me, what did Newton observe then? That's giving credence to something that's been already debunked within our own rhetoric, even if you're a heliocentrist. The notion that mass attracts mass, that's Newton's law of gravity, was superseded 109 years ago. So no matter what you say from this point forward, you can't claim that you've got validity for something that's been overturned.
it hasn't been overturned?
So what's the phenomena?
Simply,
So what's the phenomenon
the
then?
phenomenon is an acceleration on objects on the Earth of 9.81 meters per second squared towards the downwards direction.
What, like
We don't
clouds?
observe that.
So like clouds?
No.
So
clouds
no
are
then. So that
cl-
wouldn't be the
like-
naturally, so not naturally occurring phenomena, because it's immediately defied when I say clouds. So when you say the phenomena of
No, it
things
isn't.
falling, I'm replying to you.
Okay.
Yeah, that means shut your mic. I heard your claim. Yeah? The downward
I'm
acceleration
waiting
9
for the
point...
reply.
What part of shut your mic when I talk don't you understand?
You
Second
stop talking
attempt.
while-
Now the third attempt that he's interrupting. Do you not like me refuting your garbage that you feel the need to chant through the top of me while I refute it? That's not going to stop me refuting your garbage. No.
Get on
not,
with it,
or-
Nathan.
What about you stopping
and now it's the
complaining
White
about what
Knights.
I'm
This is
doing
the fifth
and
attempt, and now we've got
respond to me?
White Knights and the guy still interrupting me off mute. No, you are just wrong. Now, for the mods who tell me that I'm going to get insultory towards these people, the White Knight and the guy who can't go on mute, he's still not on mute. He's just poised to interrupt. There's his light flashing. Just go on mute while I refute your garbage.
Get on with it, Nathan. Nathan.
Who's that?
Sorry.
Who's
Go
that?
ahead. Eli, good morning.
That was Eli messing around. That was good, Eli.
I don't need it, Eli. It's not funny. We're now further and further away from me refuting the guy's garbage that all things go to the ground at 9.8 meters per second. They don't. You only got to look up at the clouds or observe gas behavior to know that that is not the case. Yeah, mass doesn't attract mass. Not all things are moving to the center of a sphere Earth that you've assumed after measuring it flat. That's Earth. For you to infer that you've got radial values and sphere Earths and gravity and out-of-date notions of mass attracting mass and things all moving towards the center of the mass of Earth because it's a giant mass. What about clouds? What about gas
He
behavior?
didn't play
It all moves. Sixth attempt. Jesus
It wasn't
wept.
even me.
Whoever is doing that,
Quit
shut your
fucking
mouth.
whining, boy.
So it's this guy,
All right,
this
guys. The next guy that interrupts is getting muted.
the quiet
Let's have a
Riot. He's
civil
done it 4
conversation.
times. Yeah,
No,
why aren't
it
you
wasn't
watching
me.
the guys
It
flashing
was
and
some
just
other person.
server muting them? 6 attempts. 6 attempts. Any more White Knights? Are you all terrified of your stupid garbage notion of gravity being absolutely ripped to shreds by me, a flat earther, that it needs 6 attempts and several interjections from White Knights telling me to get on with it? What, get on with destroying your religion at its base and pointing out that gravity itself, the notion that all things go to the ground at 9.8 meters per second, requires a flat earth to describe that downward bias. Down with respect to a horizontal plane of reference. So you need a flat earth to describe the down that doesn't happen. It's defined by gas behavior. So no, there's no need to explain a phenomena that isn't occurring. Not all things move towards the ground. Anything else to prove your science for gravity?
Are you done now?
Maybe you could acknowledge me. You said all things going to the ground, 9.8 meters per second. I give you gas behavior. That is not the case and hasn't been the case. It's been acknowledged even within heliocentrism. For 109 years, you're just wrong and ignorant. Ignorant that it's been superseded 109 years ago and ignorant of gas behavior.
Yeah.
There's
Are you
Omnivore. There's Omnivore clicking his mic through the top of me. Just kick him out. Did it all day yesterday. 7 attempts. Omnivore's just interrupted. I've not had one single clean sweep of a response to a guy that says we've got science for gravity. No, we don't. Gas behavior defies it.
I just want to make sure that you're already done, so you don't accuse me of interrupting you again. Can I respond now? Okay,
Yes, please
so
respond. Go ahead.
okay, thank you. So I've never claimed that all objects do that. I simply said that objects. It doesn't mean that in every single condition, every single object have to experience that, because other factors and variables come also into play. But because if you manipulate some other variable, and it can cause, for example, some forces that counter that acceleration to some extent, doesn't invalidate the observation that in other environment this observation will occur. Because if I have some object right here in my room, I can stop holding it in the middle of the air, I will see it accelerate approximately at that speed, and I don't have to worry about some clothes outside of my room, because this is completely irrelevant to my observation. I don't have to generalize that observation to every single object. I can observe that in even one with even one example, and I already can have a phenomenon that I can later research to a greater extent, for example, by performing some experiments on it.
What phenomena?
The things falling down.
So I've just covered this.
Yes, your rebuttal to this phenomenon was pointing out at other examples of things not doing that in other conditions. In this case, this condition would be the relative density of the clouds in relation to the air. And by pointing out that in other examples this doesn't happen, that must mean that when it does happen, that phenomenon supposedly isn't observed. Like if something other was supposed to cancel out the fact that I still observe what I observe, which doesn't make any logical sense.
You've told me what you observe when describing the universal law of gravitation. It isn't a law. It doesn't always occur. What part of this aren't you getting?
It is a law, but as
So
I
it's a
already
law
said, the
that things go
reality
to the ground at 9.8 meters per second. No, they don't. The clouds and gas
It's
don't do that.
it's a law that they undergo constant acceleration of that rate, but because other forces also
No, they
exist in
don't.
nature.
No, they don't.
How they don't?
Do you know what a law means? What does law mean?
Yes, a law.
What's the law?
law
What's law
is-
of nature mean? What does that mean? If I say it's a law of nature, what's it mean?
It's some kind of relationship that universally occurs.
Universally occurs. So do
Yeah.
things universally go down at 9.8 meters per second? No, they don't. Ergo, not a universal law of gravitation because it's not universally occurring. That's the third time. You're just
They
wrong.
Still experience. They
what?
still experience.
What,
them,
things going down?
But
No, we don't. It's not universal. Gas behaviour. I am so sick of this. It's like I'm talking to a brick wall.
the law
I
of
say,
gravitation.
no, it's not universal. He starts chanting through me. Yeah, I've heard your repetition of it 4 times. Now I've got something to add beyond yet another 5th repetition of the same things. That, well, in certain circumstances, it's a universal friggin' law. No, not in certain circumstances. Do you not understand the word universal? Clearly not. Now, I'm sick of talking to you. It's like communicating with a brick wall. Universal means always. Universally. Not under certain circumstances. I can still have my religious belief that all things move towards the centre of a sphere Earth. They don't. It's defied by gas behaviour. Not universal. Therefore not a law. And not only not a law, hasn't been accepted as a law within heliocentrism for 109 years. You're just ignorant.
Okay, so the law of gravitation, it doesn't predict that all of the objects would have
Laws don't
experience
predict
that
ever.
acceleration.
You're just talking stupidness now. I'm sick of it. Laws don't
They
predict.
do. Laws
They
are-
describe. You don't know what you're talking about. Shut up. No, laws don't predict. They're not predictive tools. That's science. Science makes predictions. They're called hypotheses. Laws describe. You don't know what they are. Stop talking. You've exposed your
Laws are a
ignorances.
tool of science.
Stop. You're obviously
I will
ignorant of
not
this stuff,
stop
but you still
talking
think you
because
need
you're
to
not
hold
the
the
owner
mic,
of
and
this
obviously
voice
the
chat.
mods still feel it's justified for the person demonstrated wrong 5 times with his ignorance of what laws actually are. Universally occurring descriptions, yeah? They're not predictions. That's a hypothesis. You're in a category error. Now stop talking. Meanwhile, there is no scientific evidence for gravity because there's no observed phenomena. The current rhetoric for gravity describes a pseudo-geometry, a bent pseudo fourth dimensional time component. That's what gravity currently is. Sod all to do with forces. I quote George Musa, gravity's not a force. End quote. George Musa. What about Professor Brian Cox? Quote, there isn't really a force of gravity at all. End quote. You want to sit here jabbering me all day about how there's a force pulling things down? Ignorant, out of date, sick of it. Brick wall communication. Doesn't accept a single sodding word I say to him. Doesn't matter if I quote Cox to him all day, telling him from his pseudoscience rhetoric on his throne of heliocentrism that it's not a bloody force. He'll be telling me there's a force pulling things down. Just doesn't know the rhetoric of his own bloody religion. Still prepared to argue me with it. Tell me that these laws make predictions? No, clearly ignorant. Clearly has no right on the mic.
That's the problem, Nathan. We know their religion better than they do.
Yeah, and all the descriptions of Newtonian mechanics come from an inertial plane, which they don't claim the Earth is an inertial plane. So go get your own religion.
Oh
Yeah.
dear.
Yeah, and the down, this was definitely not going to be acknowledged or addressed in any way by my opponent rinsing and repeating the same statement 5 times. The down requires a flat Earth. What down? A vector in the downward with respect to a horizontal plane. Yeah, you'll need a horizontal plane of reference to describe down in gravity.
Hey, are you done?
Yes?
Okay. So it turns out that despite what you said, more than one force can act on an object at a time. And in fact, we do see gravity acting on objects, including gases, and yes, even clouds. You've heard of rain, maybe? So we see the downward bias, which is gravity, is just one force that is acting on a bunch of other things. Namely, probably in the cases you're thinking of, buoyancy.
This
Or
guy doesn't
Gravity's
know the
not a
difference
force.
between liquid and gas.
So, yeah,
I
You don't know
so
absolutely do,
omnivore. Quote,
Nathan.
Professor Brian Cox. There isn't
Mhm.
really a force of gravity at all. End quote. Professor Brian Cox.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's an
You're
astrophysicist.
talking about
He's an
so you're-
astrophysicist. Did you want to take it up with Cox that the force that you say, the 109-year out of date of force that's been superseded by Einsteinian pseudo-Riemannian geometry, when Cox describes it not being a force, you feel that Professor Brian Cox, astrophysicist who understands pseudo-Riemannian fourth space-time bending and the geometry of that fourth dimension being a gravitational geodesic in space-time, you think that's a force, therefore Cox is wrong and I'm wrong. No, you're just wrong.
So-
No, you're
Are you
wrong. I haven't finished. You don't need to chant through
Tell
the
me
top
when
of
you're
me
done.
correcting. You don't need to chant just because you're wrong. No, I will tell you that you are wrong with citations followed up with George Musa, editor, Scientific American. Gravity is not a force. End quote, George Musa. So when you tell me that I can observe the rain being a force and effect of gravity, you're just wrong.
Which way did that rain go first anyway?
It went up. It evaporated
The
from the
water
ground
went up.
level and went into a gas and went up and formed the clouds in the upward vector. That's what gas does.
No. It's supposed to be downward, Nathan. What are you talking about up? What's
What-
this up you speak
When
of?
I say it goes up towards the clouds that you can only tilt your head up to observe, you're saying no, that's actually a downward bias in the 9.8 meters per second downward category. No, definitely not. That's not how gas behaves. There is no law of gravity pulling things down. Doesn't always occur. It was superseded 109 years ago. Currently, gravity's a bent geodesic in a fourth dimension geometry invented by Einstein. And it is not a force, end quote, George Musa. But yeah, I've got two numpties telling me how it's a force. They're just wrong. Omnivores had his open mic disturbed the entire previous conversation with total disrespect for everyone who wants to listen to this. Yeah? And while I was telling him how wrong he was, he decided to chant through the top of me. Doesn't know where his local mute button is, but feels he's got the right to tell me that gravity is a force when it hasn't been for 109 years.
Can I respond to any of that now?
Can you go on mute when you're not talking so that we don't have to server mute you?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Excellent.
So I don't ever really know when you're finished because it seems like you just stop and start. But anyway, so first off, I agree that gravity is not a force in the way that you're trying to make it. It's not. It is a inertial force, or you could call it a fictitious force, depending on which term you want. However, it's very, very real. The downward acceleration is 100% real, and it does affect gas. You don't have to like it, but I put a link in the chat to the barometric formula, which shows how the force that is generated by gravity is affects gas, and we see that in the pressure gradient. It's not because of temperature, not because of where gas is created, it's because of gravity. That's how it works. It has G in the formula, and you can go look at it. You are simply wrong.
Okay.
The force of gravity.
Name a gas that's falling down. Name a single gas that isn't produced at ground level and makes its way up. Go.
Air. Oxygen.
So gas, you think oxygen is poured in from the clouds, do you? Wrong.
Here's how you know.
No, that was wrong. Do you want
Nathan,
to try again? That was wrong. I asked.
Well,
excuse me. You were wrong. Now I'll reiterate my question without constant, incessant interruption from the man who was wrong. I asked if you could name a gas that's poured in from the sky that isn't produced at ground level and made its way up. You can only go up from ground level. And you said oxygen. No, oxygen's not produced in magical oxygen factories in the sky and poured down with G. Go boom boom. So, give me a different gas that comes down, as opposed to every single gas ever, which is produced at ground level and makes its way up. Defying your garbage that you say, because you've cited it, it's correct, in spite of you, so far, telling me that oxygen's produced in the sky and poured downwards. It isn't. No gas does that. They're all produced at ground level, and they all go up, without exception.
Are you done?
What, absolutely destroying gravity that you think is gases going down, go boom, boom, go splash, splash, when they're all produced at ground level and go up? Yeah, I'm done annihilating your stupid nonsense of gravity. Very much done. Maybe, are you done interrupting me while I answer your question? Maybe you weren't done after I was still in the middle of the same sentence. You weren't done interrupting the middle of that sentence, were you? Yeah, because I've annihilated your stupid notions of gravity. Because you think gas go down, go boom, boom, because you can Google search. Meanwhile, gases are produced at ground level and go up, defying gravity, as a downward bias at 9.8 meters per second.
All right. So, first off, heavier than air gases absolutely go down. You can pour CO2 or sulfur hexafluoride out of a glass like a liquid, and it will go down. This is 100% because of the difference in buoyancy that is created by the force of gravity.
All
So,
gases.
y-
Oh,
you
I
know,
thought you were
you're
done.
just- the reason you know that gravity is at work is because you can use a barometer. You can use one on your phone if you have one, Nathan, and you can check to see if in your house, in the very house where you're living, or out under the open sky, you can see that as you go lower, the the atmospheric pressure, the barometric pressure, as described by the barometric formula, which I posted into the chat, which I doubt you can see or would look at, but you can go Google it if you don't know what the barometric formula is. That is because gravity creates a pressure gradient where there is more gas at ground level at lower altitudes than at higher level, and this applies to, for example, oxygen.
Yeah, Honorable, but
You're
your question was, his question was,
Bear with me. Just 1 second. I'm sorry.
What gas was produced in the air and made its way down? And you said oxygen.
Shout out to OBE Lines, says Nathan, trashing Globers never gets old. Thank you for the super chat.
So, Book FN. First off, oxygen isn't produced per se, it is exchanged, typically at ground level, not necessarily. It's exchanged in plants at a variety of different altitudes. So, not at what we would consider sea level, because you can have trees on top of a mountain that
Okay,
are
thank you. That was the
exchanging
answer I was
oxygen all the time.
looking for. That's
But
wonderful.
One second.
So I got
Nathan,
my
I'm not
answer.
quite
Can I move
finished.
on?
I don't. No.
No, I'm not allowed to move on now. You've conceded my question. So the gas. So I'm not allowed to
You're
move on.
interrupting me, Nathan. You're interrupting me.
Level, so
Nathan, you're
ground
interrupting me.
level is
Yeah, I was
still
leading
where
the
the
conversation till he subverted it.
Yeah. So it turns
And now he's
out
decided
that
he's going to lead the
pressure
conversation that I'm asking
equalizes-
questions about. I see.
It turns out that pressure
Perfectly reasonable.
equalizes, Nathan, at the speed of sound, something that I guess you didn't know. So if what you were saying was true, we would have an updraft moving at roughly the speed of sound from where all of this oxygen is being created, which it's not being, into the sky, and it would equalize all over the world, which in fact, 100% we don't see. So your conception of gas, of atmosphere, is 100% wrong, but that's because you don't know what the
Okay,
barometric
I don't need the
formula
ad hom
is,
or
and
insult. Thank you. I don't need the ad hom or insult. I heard your straw man argument. I can address your straw man when you're done jabbering. Are you done jabbering? You done jabbering? You done jabbering? No, he's just going to put a massive amount of jabbery air between me ever responding. No, never going to get to respond.
You just want to.
No, Mods won't do anything about it. He's just going to talk incessantly. Monologuing. I thought monologuing wasn't allowed.
Well, he's interrupting me, SE. I
Okay,
guess.
just wrap it
Wait,
up. Wrap it up,
just
please.
stupid
Let's not do
claim.
this.
Nope, never going to get to respond.
So for the audience, go look up barometric gas pressure. You'll see gas.
We already
laws
heard
that
this.
use gravity.
We already heard this.
You can go look it up.
We already heard it.
Explain why they don't work.
Sorry, no, maybe we're just going to get him monologuing the same thing 5 times.
That's not what you're going to get. He doesn't know what he's talking about.
And now he's server muted himself. No, hold on. Just for the audience benefit, the guy's a coward. Now he's waffled on with his little monologue. He's not going to listen to my response. Well, given that he's server muted himself, let's just remove him from the call. So what he actually wanted to do was scattergun me and then not listen because he's server deafened himself.
Nathan, I wouldn't take that personally. That's what he does. He listens, he says his point, and then as a person goes to rebut, he goes on. That's just his MO, buddy.
So his MO is I talk and no one will respond to what I've got to say. And when you're done responding, I won't listen to a word of it. But then I'll come off server deafen and just make the same claim again, having not listened to a single response. How is that a debate?
You're absolutely right. We're going to.
He shouldn't be part of the conversation.
Sorry,
If I can't respond to him, why is he part of the conversation? It's not a conversation.
He's out.
It's a diatribe and monologue at me.
I'm going to mute him. He's gone. So let's continue.
The audience needs to hear.
Well, it's a straw man that he put to me. Well, what he's saying is, if gas expands upwards from ground level, then therefore we must have a massive amount of upward draft into the sky vacuum. Yeah, that's what we'd have if space was real, based on his claim, because gas is produced at ground level and does make its way up. It just stays here. That would be to say at some point it's got to have collided with something so it can come back down again. Because the only way gas changes its vector is if it collides with the walls of a container or another gas particle. Now, if there's just a sky vacuum above us and all gas is produced at ground level, then all of the gas, as he described, I'll agree. Yeah, if the sky was a vacuum, we'd have a massive updraft and we'd all be dead, choking away without any gas to breathe. In fact, we'd have never developed gas pressure in the first place because the very first produced gas particle would vacate the ground, go up, and never return. We'd have never developed gas pressure. Meanwhile, we do have dynamic systems with gradiated pressure, not gravity pulling gas go down, go boom, boom, because it's all produced at ground level and does all make its way up. But because the highest concentrations of the gases are where they're produced at ground level, that's shockingly where we have the highest production and therefore concentration of gas. It dissipates into a cyclical system that must be under containment for us to have pressurized gradiated systems to be breathing. Ergo, the sky vacuum is fake, and gravity, which is not a force and hasn't been for 109 years, has no bearing on this upward motion of the gas, because gravity's a downward bias at 9.8 meters per second squared, and gas isn't behaving like that. Now I'm done. Not that he listened to a single word of my response.
Yeah,
I have that evidence you asked for.
Nobody asked for anything.
Hold on. Ryan's trying to get in.
Yeah, the guy doesn't
I
know
have
what he's
that
talking about.
evidence.
Even with, sorry, Brenda, just a
Nobody
moment.
asked for any evidence
Even-
second time.
Even within his own paradigm, they are relinquishing the claim that gravity creates a gas pressure gradient. Go to Sabine Hasselfelder. She'll tell you she even corrected herself after someone else corrected her. When she was saying the gradient was created by a force of gravity, she was corrected by somebody who was a knowledgeable person. She listened and she corrected herself on her own video. What they're claiming, right, is an open system, right? Let's say gas in a canister in a factory, that's a closed static system. What we live in is a closed dynamic system. That's why we have weather and we have gas cycles. It's what's known as the closed dynamic system. What the straw man is, when people try and say, how come the gas doesn't do this in your closed system? And they're talking about a closed static system, as I said, which would be like a canister of gas you could buy at a hardware store or in a factory. Whereas we have a closed dynamic system which cycles. There's no cycles in a canister of gas. You know, you can heat it and you will create a gradient within it with two different temperatures. But the difference is we have a moving temperature creator basically with the sun. Stirs the whole lot up. So that's why we have weather. And there's a load, I could go on, like I did a whole presentation on this several years ago. And none of our opposition have been able to address it because they used official information of what creates it. Finish.
Meanwhile, the question that was on the table was scientific evidence of gravity, or any single viable hypothesis from any of the fields of astronomy, cosmology, or astrophysics.
I have that.
Brenda's got it. She's got it. Give
What
it
have
to
you
her. Run with it, Brenda.
Yeah. Galileo's experiments down an inclined plane, in which he rolled various objects down an inclined plane and timed them. And when he collated the data, he had evidence for a force called gravity.
How did he do that when gravity didn't turn up? A force called gravity didn't turn up until
Brian.
Isaac Newton.
That's not an experiment. What was the observed natural phenomena?
Balls rolling down an inclined plane.
So you're trying to establish the cause of balls rolling down planes then? If that's an experiment. If that's your naturally occurring phenomena, that's your dependent variable. So dependent variable, balls rolling down hills. So what was the cause of specifically balls and only balls rolling down hills naturally? Because that's what you will be experimentally validating if it's an experiment.
What he did was he measured the speed with which they rolled down the hill, and that speed was invariant.
So the speed was the cause. Is that what you're saying?
Speed was the phenomenon that he observed. And he observed that it didn't matter what the material
So you can't have two phenomena.
Was.
You only study one thing at a time, Brenda. So you're either studying why they roll down the hill, or you're studying what the speed of things rolling down hills naturally. So all you're going to establish
it's
is the
just the
cause of the speed of things rolling down naturally, or why they roll down. One or the other. It's not two. You seem very confused
It's
about
just
what.
the speed.
You don't need to chant through me, Brenda. Yeah, that's fine. You can be corrected without a constant, incessant chanting through the top of you being corrected. I'm correcting you because you seem to be under the misapprehension that you can have two phenomena being studied simultaneously. Speed of things rolling and why they roll. And I'm correcting your dumbass, saying, no, that's not what you do.
The speed is the phenomenon. The hypothesis that you form at the end of it is that speed must be due to a universal force.
So,
why would you do
That's
that?
not an if statement. That's not an if statement. Wait, this ain't no supposition. You joshing. You joshing my taters, ain't you?
This is not a viable
I don't
hypothesis.
understand
This is not a viable scientific prediction. It cannot be formulated into an if and then statement with a null. It's not science. It's garbage.
No, it's an observation. It's an observation of gravity. It's an observation of the fact.
Oh, so it's begging the question.
Regardless,
begging the
excuse me,
question.
I was
then.
talking.
So begging the question.
No, that's not what begging the question means.
When you
don't
say
know what that
observation of gravity, you're observing the thing that you're trying to prove. So you've already
No,
decided.
It's not trying to prove.
You've
It's not
already.
trying to prove
I'm
gravity,
explaining your
Nathan.
fallacy to you. You objected. So I'm having to explain it to you because you don't understand yourself how assuming the very thing you're trying to prove, that would be gravity, by saying we're observing gravity, is very much circular reasoning, Brenda. Now, you might not like my interjection, and you may feel the need to chant through the top of it again as I have to correct you. You're just ignorant. You're just using fallacious reasoning. If your attempt to prove gravity starts with we're observing gravity, it's circular reasoning, aka begging the question. Now, I will tell you this because your use of fallacious reasoning irks me. It irritates me.
Right. So it's not trying to prove gravity. It's observing the phenomenon of gravity. And you don't know
So
what
not
begging
just
the
the
question means.
circular reasoning I've just gone through. I'll just rinse and repeat the exact same circular reasoning again after I've very exasperatedly pointed it out to you. I don't want to hear Brenda go through her circular reasoning again. Can we not shut her up? She's failed on her ass and then completely ignored me.
Right. So it's not trying to prove gravity. It's making an observation about gravity.
Yeah, that's the third time she's rinsed and repeat her circular logic.
It's not circular.
It's elliptical logic then.
Yeah, it is. It's begging the question.
If it's not trying to prove it, why are you claiming it as evidence? That's weird.
That's what they do. The moment you point out that they've used fallacious reasoning, well, I'm not trying to prove it. So why are you presenting this? Well, it's just a logical inference for something I'm already assuming is there when I look at it because I know it's already there and that's what we're looking for. But that's not circular. Oh my God.
Nathan, you could pull up a show from 5 years ago and it'll be exactly what you just heard 2 seconds ago.
I didn't know Galileo knew about gravity. I didn't think gravity turned up until Isaac Newton. Well, technically, Johannes Kepler.
But Kepler's using the motions that have been tracked off a flat plane, isn't he?
Yeah.
Oh,
And they
dear.
use an up and a down for their gravity claims.
You guys all aware of this? When we talk about Kepler, we're talking about the star motions that have come from the ephemeris. That's the motions of the stars with respect to a flat plane.
Yeah, he's actually where he got it all starts and ends with the sun, because Kepler's analemma is based around the sun, and he had to back engineer what we see the sun do on a yearly basis and put it into the Copernican model, which he did, and that's why they have the 23.4 degree tilt, and you have the 3 million miles further from their sun in the northern summer and 3 million miles closer to their sun in the southern summer. That's all based around, that's all due to Kepler. But all that was based on him just looking at the sun, taking angles to it off a flat plane. That's it.
Yeah.
Well, actually, he started with astrology. He learned that through astrology first. That's where he first learned it. Sorry, go on.
Also, a tracking of the motion of the stars and the patterns and cyclical motion thereof with respect to a flat plane.
Yeah, absolutely. Even there's a lady online who I knew of before became a flat earther, and she was an astrologer. And she became a flat earther 2016, 2017. And she said, this all works so much better now that I'm not trying to make a globe work. So even for her, and she's like a 40 or 50-year astrologer, she said the whole thing works better for her now that she uses a flat plane. And not a
because it's always worked. It still does. That's why all the maps are flat. That's how the world functions. We're dealing with the stars. Well, when we derived the maps in the first place, we derived those maps from our understanding of where the stars were at given times. And we've plotted them with respect to the land and then expanded out from there using the same process and just rinsed and repeated as we've expanded out the territory. Flat in all respects. This whole globe garbage has been superimposed on top using things like site reduction tables when assessing horizons, when navigating. The maths is from a flat plane has become the Earth curve maths. That's what it wasn't used. It wasn't used for that originally. It had no practical application for a globe. It was being used for sighting the horizon. That's what it was actually used for. But they've hijacked it and said, oh yeah, that's what we use it for. What, for seeing when boats go over the horizon? How useful's that? Well, it isn't. Other than for brainwashing people into belief that they're on a sphere. That's all Earth curve maths does. But it did originally have a useful, practical application. And it was used in navigating on a flat Earth when deriving the optical resolution loss point for the horizon when calculating with surface level and eye level based on your altitude. Now called Earth curve maths. Because your optical resolution point is plotted in orthographic view below surface level and marked with an X and called horizon.
Yeah, even within the almanac, the site reduction tables, the almanac pre-assumes, and for site reduction, it's pre-assumed that you're dealing with a horizontal plane. They basically state that they're using mean sea level and they treat it as a horizontal plane. So for the site reduction tables to even happen, they need to treat the Earth as having a horizontal baseline, basically. And astronomy, when anything astronomy are doing, they're always using their equatorial plane at equinox, and they're treating it as stationary. And this equatorial plane at equinox extends out into their celestial plane, which basically is just one massive plane. Because the equatorial plane of the globe is smaller in area than the actual area of the world, because the globe has such a small radius. So consequently, they have to extend that out into their terrestrial plane.
And
so
it keeps going.
Anything, they pre-assume.
Hold on, it keeps going. There's one further step. I've just forgotten the title of it, but John's here, so hopefully he'll remind me. Right? So
yeah, let me finish what I'm saying first.
Okay, go on.
This is what they do for astronomy, and when they're using the EQ mount telescopes, right, they're using a stationary plane, and it's presumed to be at equinox, and that plane extends out into their celestial plane, giving them a much huger stationary plane. That's how they must describe it. Now I'm finished. Thank you.
I think it's something like an anisotopically flat plane is how they describe the entire. Asymptotically flat plane is how they will describe the extended universe plane, which is also flat. It's all flat. That's how everything functions.
That's slightly different, though. That's like talking about space-time. What I'm talking about is what astronomy do.
Yeah,
that's slightly different.
Where I'm dovetailing it in is by earlier when I say the heliocentric model, including the derivation from Copernicus onwards, comes from the ephemeris and then the equatorial plane. So you're always using a plane. Now, when they extend out their pseudo-geometry into a fantasy world, the way that their geometry can still only functionally operate is flat, Euclidean, within a box. So that's exactly how they describe it. So everything's always going to be useful if it's described and functional flat. Everything else is just an apology. When it's globe-shaped, I mean. That's where it's at. It's how it's being used. And they can't work beyond any of the standard geometry when they try and shoehorn in an extra dimension. I say, I'll have to rephrase that because of you, Brian, because you did explain this really well a couple of months ago. When you were like, no, they haven't actually shoehorned in an extra geometry. They've substituted out the X dimension for time.
No, the Z dimension.
Z dimension.
Yeah. So instead of X, Y, and Z, you have X, Y, and time. They just call it the fourth dimension, but they have to remove the third dimension, which is the Z, which is the zenith, above and below the XY plane, to add in time. So they don't have four dimensions. They just remove one of the dimensions and call it that time. Which is why... I'll go in a second. I'm just going to explain something about Einstein.
I was going to say, well, that's why you can show it visually with a bent geodesic, and all you're shown on a two-dimensional screen that you've got in front of you, if you're showing a 3D rendering, is XYZ coordinates, and then they'll show you a globe in the middle of a bent, trippy-looking well. You're like, that's a 3D representation right there. Which is it, Z-axis, is the geodesic bent time in this graph. And you're like, no, this is just a cool-looking 3D drawing. There's no fourth dimension in this. No, you're not understanding. If you were a playing card, you wouldn't understand what it was like to have a three-dimensional stomach. Things would pass straight through you. But now, because you're a three-dimensional being, imagine, like the playing card, you trying to picture the fourth dimension. You just couldn't do it. That's what they tell you.
Can you guys see live text in Earth Awakenings?
No, I can't. I only focus on the VC. I'm sorry, SE Montreal. But if one of my mods is in there, Divergent Droid's in there. If there's something you want my attention on, Divergent Droid potentially can stick it in MasterB and I can present it to the public. Just ask him.
Yeah, it would be interesting. If you go to 52 past the hour, I can give you a visual representation of their fantasy 4D. It's called a Tesseract.
Sure, I've seen a Tesseract.
It's a box. Yeah, you got to see it. It's a box within a box moving around. And this is how they represent 4D. But the trick here is it has to be constantly moving. If you look at it, you'll see what I mean. It's fantasy la la land.
That's not a trick, though, is it? You could draw that in a 3D rendering program, and they have. There's the drawing of it. It's just a 3D drawing.
No, it's not. Yeah. It's a 2D drawing. It's only possible in 2 dimensions to depict it the way they do. You could not recreate that in the 3rd dimension. So they trick you into thinking it's a 4th dimensional depiction, but it's just 2-dimensional. The same way the stairs work, the infinite stairs. It's the same trick.
Well,
you know what I mean?
Just so people understand.
It's not so much a parlor trick. It's a psychological trick. A parlor trick is something like the Cavendish experiment, a physical thing in a parlor. So the reason they're called parlor tricks is because you'd gather everyone after dinner in the parlor room and you entertain them with a trick. Something physically happening is a Cavendish experiment. This is not that. When they try and describe conceptually the bent geodesic of a 4D space-time dimension, that is a psychological trick as opposed to a parlor trick. Right, I'll just bring up your Tesseract.
Good point. Yeah,
let me
it's
just
like a
explain
pseudo.
Sorry, SE, go on.
Go ahead, Brian. Your turn this time.
No, I was just going to say, you go first and I'll go after you. I'm just going to explain why they have an X, Y, and Z, why they're using that with time.
Yeah, I just merely wanted to show the parlor trick, but Nathan's right. It's not even a parlor trick because it's a made-up thing. It's like a pseudo-parlor trick. But I just wanted to show how they envision this magic thing in their mind. It's like a constantly moving box within a box. I just wanted to show everybody how they envision this impossible 4th dimension.
Well, how Einstein I'll explain the X, Y, Z. Why they removed the Z, which is a zenith up, and what would be the nadir down, but they just call it Z down. You know, if you have X, Y, Z coordinates, you read the X on the you have X on the positive and negative, the Y on the positive and negative, and the Z on the positive and negative. So what they do is they have the XY plane, and that's space-time, right? So how this is explained is that if I held a ball, let's say a basketball, up at the top of a 300-foot high tower, and I held it for 3 seconds, and then I left it go, and it took 3 seconds for that ball to land on the ground, then technically it moved further through time when I was holding it for 3 seconds than when it was falling for 3 seconds. And the reason is because I'm further from the XY plane, which is space-time, so consequently, that ball has moved, because I'm further away from that means my time for me moves faster. So that means that ball, for those 3 seconds that I was holding it, it moved through more time than the 3 seconds it was falling for, right? It's a complete joke, right? And that's why they have the XY plane, which is space-time, and the Z, right, which is time, right, where the Z up and down is time. So that's why they say if you could get far enough away from the globe Earth, right, that you would come back and everyone would have aged different from you, simply because you moved through time at a different rate than they did. If you understand what I mean. That's how they try and explain it to themselves. Go on, Essie.
Well, Brian, it's the speed, really. They have in their fantasy, right? They have 2 instances where time can be affected, right? Speed and gravity. So yeah, that's how their fantasy works. Like if one brother's traveling in space, one ages slower than the other. Yeah, it has to do with speed and gravity in their fantasy. Yeah.
But that's the speed of
makes
time.
great movies, though.
But that's
distance
the speed
over
of
time. Yeah, distance
it's
over
the speed
time.
of time. Yeah.
What the hell?
The gravity thing is just the bending of space-time, right? And that's the gravity thing. It's not like, I'm not saying you're saying this, I'm just saying for anyone listening, it's not like a force of gravity. This is what replaced all that. It's the bending of time and the rate of time. And that's what happens with the gravity well. It's complete and utter nonsense. But this is what they have to claim, that there's time bending. You know what I mean?
Science fiction.
Right?
Sounds like
the
science
fabric,
fiction.
right? In their fantasy, right? They take the concept of time and what's between me and you, Brian, and they make a fabric. And they call it the fabric of space-time. It's complete and utter nonsense, made up stuff, but yeah, that's their model.
That's what the Emperor's New Clothes is made out of.
What model?
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone picked up on that. No, I just want to acknowledge that joke. Yeah, John, the Emperor's new clothes are made out of the fabric of space-time.
What we have mostly in this arena, Essie, is mostly the ballers who claim a force of gravity when that was thrown out in 1915. But it was brought back in unofficially for the moon landings. Because in the moon landing footage, they show astronauts who are claimed to be on a lunar surface where they're only 1/6 the weight they are on their globe Earth. Because weight exists in that paradigm, and because of that, and because the moon is smaller than the globe Earth, that means there's less gravitational pull, less gravitational attraction, so they weigh less. And this is how they had to show it, because if they were trying to do the moon landings with the current gravity of the time and the still current gravity, which is general relativity, they just have a couple of guys strolling around at normal speed, not doing anything special. So it was no good to them. They needed to show it as if there was a force of gravity happening. And that's why there's such confusion since that time. You have all these universities and not teaching people about a force of gravity and then throwing the whole thing out the window when people get to higher education and saying, never mind all that, that doesn't exist. It's actually general relativity. And now they're trying to get rid of general relativity. It's a joke. The whole thing is a complete and utter joke, because NASA all the NASA footage all involves some things that would look like as if there was a force of gravity happening, because they had to, because they started off in 1969 with this rubbish. So all they did was they slowed down the footage. All they did, and if you look at the footage sped up by 2 or by whatever, an extra half, it just looks like people not walking around in normal with suits on. It doesn't look like anything special.
Oh yeah, when it comes to space, moon landing, we've disseminated that so many times here. Like, we can go from there's many avenues. We can go from pressure to dust to cameras to I don't know if you guys are into the new James Webb. I call it the plane telescope. I don't know if you guys heard. Yeah.
We don't really do. We only just talk about gas pressure. But when it comes to gravity, we do address the fact that we do talk about the fact that they did have to use they had to basically make it look like a force of gravity existed for the moon landing footage, because they couldn't use general relativity because it's all theoretical. So they had no way to make it look actual. So they had to use a claimed force. They had to go back in time to a claimed force of gravity for their footage,
And nobody caught on to this, Brian?
No, because it's a big contradiction that they live with. They live with this big contradiction. NASA is showing them a force of gravity, and in higher education, they're teaching people that doesn't exist. You know what I mean? So how are NASA showing footage to these people of what would be a force of gravitational attraction? That's the whole point of the footage. They slow it down to make it look like they're bouncing around, but they're not bouncing around. If you bring up the speed, they're just running around at normal speed. But it looks like they're bouncing around because it's slowed down.
Yeah, we cover stuff like that here, like almost on a daily basis. We went through the harnesses, the jumping, the spacesuits. I can tell you like 100 things like that's wrong with the moon landing. Yeah, just don't get me started.
Yeah, but the main thing with the moon landing is, hold on, the main thing with the moon landing is it's in a fake region.
Yeah, we all
right. Hold on.
Correct.
Before we go on to that, do you know how to calculate the trip to the moon and why they never really want to go through it? And they lose all their the data.
Nobody on the panel guess.
Telemetry.
Nobody guessed on the panel. Just the people in Discord. Go ahead. Ask again, John. Just hopefully they all perked up because they can tell I know the importance of this question. Ask again. Only the Discord server, please. Answer, John.
Yeah. Do you know how they calculate the distance to the moon, or how they the day they lost? They said why it was lost, or why they don't show people that information. Do you know why?
I'm not sure I understand the question. They lost a day? What exactly are you saying?
You know the telemetry data that they said they lost? Do you know how they calculated that?
Oh, yeah.
Distance. So which one specifically are you asking? I would guess, what is it? Infrared
Van Allen radiation belt.
I think John is talking about the reels of telemetry data that they claimed they lost. Boxes and boxes of them.
Oh, yeah. They re-went over it. They videotaped over it because they didn't have enough footage.
Roboting.
Yeah, you're roboting their dice slow. They claim all kinds of things. Tell us, John. Tell us what. Tell us, please. I want to laugh.
Oh, yeah. It's got a great punchline. All of it's calculated from a flat plane.
Boom.
Okay, gotcha.
That's hilarious. How are they calculating it? Can you explain that a little bit?
Right. They're taking angular functions from a flat plane, calculating that into the celestial sphere, taking that orbital data from the flat plane and applying a distance to it. They need it to be flat more than we do.
Yeah, it has to be flat.
Are you
to
saying
get
the
anything in that
measurements?
measurement.
Are you saying the laser measurements, the radar measurements? What exactly are you saying here?
I think radar has to be leveled, doesn't it? When you're building a radar station, they don't build them on sides of hills. They build them on, they level out the ground, don't they? They anytime you're working with an incident angle, it's always with respect to level. All of their measurements, without doubt and exception, use a horizontal plane of reference.
They have to.
Yeah, what the telemetry data would have shown is a rock going up and then coming down. That's technically all it would have shown. Up and down in relation to a flat plane. That's technically all it would have shown. Because if they tried to make up data even, they'd still have to use your orbital data. They'd still have to use a flat plane. All of it would be involved in a flat plane, whether they're talking about the orbital, the moon, they'd have to use a flat plane. They'd have to use a flat plane from the center of the moon to do the same thing. If they're talking about any orbit of the moon.
Well, personally, I don't even think that they can do what they claim they did. In other words, they claim they shoot a laser or a radar at a body 250,000 miles away, they claim, which is moving. They have to lead the radar and then somehow it bounces back that way. Like, that's kind of, physically almost impossible. And they say they get one or two photons or one or two like, really? This is what you expect us to believe?
Right, that's a story they add on, but what they actually do is they aim a laser at the moon. They send out a beam, a straight line laser, at an angle with relation to a horizontal plane, and they get a signal back. All the rest of the story they make up afterwards is garbage. We don't know what that laser is transversing to figure out anything to do with distance. But what we do know is that the angle that they fire that laser at is with respect to a horizontal plane of reference. And that's the only thing we can know.
Yeah, and they're using the two-way speed of light calculation, which is nonsense. The two-way speed of light calculation, I showed before, I can chop it up into 16, and and more, you can chop it up more than that, 32 times, 36 times, it doesn't matter. In the real world, the difference would be so small, nobody would notice it. Let's just say a policeman, a cop with a speed gun, right? You could reset those speed guns to use a different calculation that's like 32 times slower than the one that they're using, and they wouldn't even notice it. Because the two-way speed of light calculation is so much outside, it's such a load of rubbish, and it's so set outside of reality that they can just tell you it's going any speed. And they can't prove it is, and you can't disprove it is, because it's all theoretical.
Can I ask you a question, Brian?
Of course.
Regarding Dell's thing, Earth's moving up at constant rate. I watched your rebuttal video to it, and I couldn't make head and tail of it. Did you say that everything would weigh the same, or that everything would weigh nothing?
Well, technically, everyone would weigh nothing because there's no downward force, because weight doesn't exist. Like
I don't even know what this does for anyone. My bad, Brian. You took a pause. I thought you were done. Go ahead.
No, just saying, Jeremy, what we call weight is technically only an apparent effect of buoyancy. That's all weight is. But we can measure that downward force, right, with weighing scales. So if you have a situation where the Earth is moving up, because Dell said it when I asked him, I said, that weight doesn't exist within that paradigm. Weight is purely only an apparent effect. It would only have to be, like you falling down off a wall is only apparent. You're not really falling. It's the Earth is coming up to meet you. So there's only an up, there's no down. Whereas in reality, we have a stationary Earth underneath us, and you stand on a weighing scale that puts up on a weighing scales, and it registers the amount of downforce it has on that scale. So consequently, if you stand on the scales and Nathan stands on the scales and I stand on the scales, the three of us are more likely going to weigh we'll have three different readings on that scale. But if the Earth is moving up and weight is only apparent, then that means if you are only you think you're falling when actually what's happening is the Earth is coming up to meet you. Then technically, when you and Nathan stand on the scales, they'll read 0. Everything will always read 0 because there's no downforce for those scales to work. Do you understand what I mean?
So you acknowledge then that there's a downward force then?
No. There is only in reality there is buoyancy, and weight is an apparent effect of that.
Even in that paradigm where the Earth's moving up. Oh, my bad, bro. I thought you were done again.
No, 1 second. It's just there is a force down the way, but there's a force up the way as well. It's got two vectors. But that doesn't
even
exist
in the paradigm
in Dell's paradigm. Go on, Jeremy. You're looking to say something in there.
Well, yeah, I mean, you keep taking pauses, and I keep thinking you're done. So I don't know. It's like you're choppy with your sentences. Anyways, even in the paradigm where Earth's moving up at a constant speed, even in that paradigm, things are still accelerating down because the Earth and the ground, when you drop something, it's getting closer to the ground at an accelerated rate. If you drop a weight or something,
but it's not accelerating. It can't accelerate. That's the whole point.
It does, though. Things the ground and the objects get closer at an when you drop something, ground,
it's not
like
going
if you drop
down.
a pen
That's
or
the point.
What's not going
down? You misunderstand it. Nothing is going down. In reality, things will fall down, but in that paradigm, there is no down. There's only
in that paradigm. Hey, yo, Brian. In that paradigm, the ground's moving up at a constant rate. Things, however, when we drop things, they're getting closer at an accelerated rate. So even in that paradigm where the ground moves up at a constant rate, things are still the ground and the object are still accelerating closer together at an accelerated rate. So you have to cover that.
No, you're not listening. You're not listening. You're adding in reality into a paradigm that is non-reality.
Exactly.
That's what
yes, an
doing,
undeniable fact about reality where you drop something, the ground and the object get closer together. Yeah, I added reality into that paradigm. My bad.
Yeah, because you're not listening. Yeah, listen to what Brian's saying.
Yeah, Dell explains it as a loss of momentum, right? A loss of momentum. That's how Dell explains it. So how are things accelerating down to a stationary Earth? We have this, displacing gases and liquids. If I drop an accelerometer off a building, it'll register 0. How's that, Brian?
That's how it's designed to do. The accelerometers are designed to do that. They require a stationary plane.
So
accelerometers do detect the downward when it's being dropped. I thought I told you that the other day, Adam.
Well, Dell's bottle with his weight and his air bubble in it, that you could think of that as a rudimentary accelerometer, right?
Why are we debating upward rising Earth?
Because it's interesting. I wanted to ask Brian because I watched his rebuttal video and I didn't understand it.
It seems like Dell did to you. That's a parlor trick.
No, he's saying he doesn't understand the rebuttal.
Right. So I just wondered.
Admitted to me, within that paradigm, this is why Dell is making the same claim as Einstein, right? Because he admitted to me weight does not exist. It's only apparent within that paradigm. Einstein said the same thing. Nothing is actually going down. It's only apparent. That the Earth moving up to meet it, right? That was Einstein's point. If the Earth can be moving up to meet the object is not accelerating down. That was Einstein's point, and Dell is saying the same thing. He admitted that to me when he was on Nathan's. I asked him about it. He said, no, weight doesn't exist. He said, it's only apparent. I said, it's only apparent. He said, yeah. That means there is nothing actually going down. It's the Earth is coming up to meet the thing. So you might think you're falling off a wall, but technically the Earth is just coming up to meet you, but just sitting in free space, waiting for the Earth to meet you, as opposed to you falling.
Yeah, but Einstein's thing actually made sense because he had the ground accelerating up, which covered all the movements we see in reality. And this one has the Earth moving up at a constant speed in Dell's paradigm, which doesn't cover the movements we see.
Like
So
the
I tried to
clouds.
say earlier. I don't know. If
Which one of those two covers the clouds and how they behave?
No, he's
someone
pointing
who
out
dropped
the
like a rock
definition of
or a-
acceleration.
Yeah, I mean, it is ridiculous when you on its face when you first hear it. I completely agree. Wouldn't the clouds though be moving with the Earth?
Want Dell's response?
No,
Never
I'm
mind
just
the
saying
clouds.
Never mind the clouds.
I don't see that as a rebuttal either.
Me neither. It's because it absolutely annihilates the position. That's why.
Yeah, if you
But
look at
wouldn't
how
the clouds
are
be
formed
moving
and what
with
they do.
everything else? I mean,
Well,
how
no,
is
because you'd have
something
to-
accelerating down, Brian, to your stationary Earth with no displacement of gases and liquids? I don't understand that.
Sorry, say that again. I missed that. What you said?
How is Dell's bottle falling through to in free fall? There's no forces acting on it. There's no pressure. So what's actually happening? What's the mechanism for this acceleration?
The air doesn't have enough. There isn't enough buoyancy in the air to stop it from doing that. It's going to go down.
Okay, this is another instance of a parlor trick. Okay, so there's a illusion being created that there's some science going on when we toss this bottle. Yeah, but in reality, if you're going to study how the world works, there's a process for that. It's called science. It has a method. Step one is observe natural phenomena. So what's the phenomena that we're studying in this instance? Well, we're not. We're creating an instance. It's a man-made effect. So if you want to know the answer to why that's synthetic things, or in this case, synthetic effects, don't go through the scientific method, it's because you already know what caused them. So, in this case, what do you think the cause is of this synthetic effect? What caused it to happen?
Dell.
Yeah, Dell.
Dell.
Well, unless you can show me that occurring in nature. Can you show me that occurring in nature? If not, it's a synthetic effect.
I mean, air bubbles rise, I guess. Rocks fall off of mountains.
Air bubbles rise. Right. So the phenomena in that instance is air bubbles rising, dependent variable, air bubbles rising. So you're going to try and figure out the cause of why air bubbles rise then. Yeah, not why Earth's moving up or down. No, it's how the phenomena becomes the thing that you're trying to figure out the cause of. In this case, bubbles rising would be the phenomena. How were they? Oh, my bad. It seems that we're equating bubbles rising with the frickin' Earth rising. No, that's not how science works. You study a phenomena and then you figure out the cause of that phenomena. You don't equate it to something that the bloody world's doing. That's what Dell does, though. He's a little magician, isn't he?
Well, I see why he reached his conclusion based on demonstration.
What was the phenomena we were studying again? Didn't get an answer.
Well, it's clearly not natural if he's got a bottle.
So how can we equate this to the? So how can we equate this to the world and extrapolate anything from it then? How is it in any way useful beyond explaining the effects of causes of Dell's creation?
It seems to show that things are accelerating down, as Jeremy likes to say, but there's no forces acting on it. So I wondered what Brian's response to that would be.
Hold it. How did the bottle go into motion exactly?
Yeah, he dropped it.
Was me thinking I said Dell caused this, and yet here we are establishing the cause, and it's he, that's Dell, tossed it, didn't he? So this is a synthetic effect. You chuckled. Hold on, Brian. You chuckled when I said Dell did it. Now you're telling me there's no force being induced. Oh right, how did the bottle move into motion? Dell put it in motion. So cause equals Dell? You laughed last time. No, it is just absurd when I break it down.
Can Brian respond? That'd be great.
Yeah, what was it? What was it you're asking? Why does the bottle fall down?
No. How come there seems to be no forces acting on it, on this accelerating thing?
Did I not just cover that 25 seconds ago? Now it's over to you, Brian. Did I not just cover this?
Yeah, just leave me cover. Let me relax. Yeah, the air doesn't have adequate buoyancy for the overall density of the bottle and what's in it. The air can't stop it from going down. If you take a hot air balloon, right, and it's when the basket is on the grass, right, and there's no air in the balloon, it's just sitting there, right. When you pump air into the balloon inflates, but the basket is still sitting on the grass, right. When you add heat to the air, suddenly what you're doing is you're changing, by adding the air in the first place, you're changing the overall density of the balloon. So you're changing the buoyancy ratio between that and the surrounding medium, which is air. And then when you heat the air that's in the balloon, you're changing it again, and the balloon goes up. It's all about buoyancy. What happened was our opposition hijacked buoyancy. And they tried to tell you buoyancy is created by weight and weight is created by gravity. Well, that's a lot of nonsense. Buoyancy was established 1900 years before Isaac Newton even turned up. And when he turned up, he didn't even mention buoyancy. It was added in afterwards. The buoyancy was cut because buoyancy is the thing that debunked all their straw man positions that they handed us as if Isaac Newton said this and said that when he hadn't said those things. So this whole thing is only based around buoyancy. If there's enough buoyancy, if there's more buoyancy than necessary, something goes up. If there's less buoyancy than necessary, something goes down. If there's adequate buoyancy, something will just sit stationary. So if you take 3 balloons, one filled with air, one filled with helium, and one half filled with air and half filled with helium, in the medium of air, the air-filled balloon will go down. The helium balloon will go up, and the one half filled with air and half filled with helium will just sit in the center of your room. So you'll have one balloon on the floor, one balloon at the ceiling, and one sitting in the center. Because the 3 of them have a different buoyancy ratio with the medium that they're in. You don't need a force. It's just buoyancy. Now, that's all it is. Density differential relationship between the medium and the objects or substances that reside within it. It's that simple. You don't need weight is only apparent. You have weight until you have weight. Let's say you put your stand on the weighing scales now, you have weight. Or you put that same weighing scales at the bottom of a swimming pool and you float over the top of it. You have no weight. Where's your weight gone? You're still the same person, but you have no weight. You didn't lose anything. Everything is the same. All the parts are there. All the bone density, everything. Well, how come you're not? Because the medium is different. The density ratio has changed. The buoyancy ratio has changed.
So Brian, you're saying it's all medium, it's all medium dependent?
Neil, I'm not going to get to you. You're not going to.
What the heck?
Hold on. You happy with that answer?
Yeah, are you claiming that weight is the cause of this acceleration then, Brian?
No, I'm claiming buoyancy. What? Weight is only an apparent effect of buoyancy.
Obviously, in Dell's paradigm, the motion is what's the cause. That's what he's putting forward. What's the cause of buoyancy in yours? You're saying RDD?
Well, buoyancy is just a density differential relationship between the medium and, how much weight does an anvil have, a blacksmith's anvil, in air? Loads of weight. But it has less weight in salt water and it has no weight in mercury. Do you know what I mean? Whereas its weight in mercury, it's gone because the density of the medium has changed. Just a density differential relationship, a buoyancy ratio relationship change. That same bottle he's dropping there, if he tries to do that in a different medium, like if that bottle has air in it and water, if he tries to hold that bottle at the bottom of the ocean, it'll just go up to the top. Where did his force down go, or his acceleration, or do you know what I mean? Where did it all go to? We have to just be honest with what we see and what's really happening. We can't say there's just a downward force or just a downward direction. The same way as we can't say there's just an upward direction. There is 2 vectors up and down, and depending on the buoyancy ratio between the object, the overall density of the object, and the density of the medium, that is basically the deciding factor of why something goes up or something goes down. What is the cause of that? I don't know. It's just nature. It just happens.
And you never will. What we're describing is a second order effect of entropy. And you're never going to get to the bottom of entropy. All you're going to ever do is rewind the arrow of time and end up at the ontological primitives, where you ask, is nature the cause of all this? Did it create itself? Violation of the first law of thermodynamics, definitely not. Or was there an external force? Given that is a true dichotomy and there can only be one of those as the two answers, and the second, the first as I gave it a minute ago, that would be nature creating itself, is a violation of a law of nature. So you're left with only one option, that is that there is an external force that created these processes, in this case entropy. That's it.
Say Nathan and everyone. Okay.
Hello. About to round out. So
who's causing all the audio chaos?
Oh, cool.
Everybody who's off mute.
Yeah, the density tower equals out in free fall, right, Ryan?
Yeah, if you drop that in free fall because it's liquids, and especially if those liquids are all what's known as polar, or most of them are what's known as polar, they will mix. But liquids will mix together. But it requires a stationary plane for those liquids to rearrange themselves. If I put a piece of wood and a piece of steel and a piece of glass into that thing and had one on the top, one in the middle, and one at the bottom of the canister, will they do the same thing? No, because they're solids. It's about the phase of matter. You know what I mean? Like, look at gases. Gases all mix together. The air is a mixture of all the gases. You know, things will mix together. But when it comes to liquids, they will rearrange themselves due to their density, but also it comes down to the types of liquids. So let's say oil and water, right? They mix together briefly, but they will always come back to the oil being on top of the water, because one is described as non-polar, which is the oil, I think it is called, and the other one is described as polar, which is the water. Whereas you take orange juice and water, and once you mix them together, they stay mixed. So it comes down to, you have to take the phase of matter into account and the diffusion, whether they'll diffuse together or not. So yeah, that happens because they're liquids. You know what I mean? Because of that phase of matter, it allows them to do it. But it won't happen with a piece of wood, a piece of steel, and a piece of glass. That won't happen. They'll just still be staying in the same order as they started it. So like that's another parlor trick. That thing about dropping a density tower. It's another total parlor trick, where they're only focusing on one phase of matter. They're not even giving any explanation to it, if you understand what I mean.
Right, with that, I'm going to say, if you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley premiering streams, then stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, if you are watching this live, this is where we bid you farewell. So another massive thank you to all of you. Smashed the super chat, liked, commented, shared, subscribed, joined as a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member, and all that good stuff. I've been Nathan Oakley once again. Stay tuned if you're watching on an after show. Thank you to today's Discord and G+ panels, and I'll see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!